Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Lost Origin, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we're trying out another way to play Lugia from the Silver Tempest set, bowing down to the awesomeness of Archeops and how flexible that Primal Turbo ability is. So let's get into the basic concept, and that is that Lugia's Assemble Star is the name of the game here. We're going for the turn 2 Assemble Star V-Star power here to get 2 Archeops from our discard pile directly onto the bench so we can take full advantage of this Primal Turbo ability, which is absolutely absurd. And in this deck, we'll be trying to make the most out of it, not just using some great colorless special energy like V-Guard and Powerful Energy, which makes Lugia's stats absurd. We're also going to be leaning into one prize packages with Aurora Energy, allowing us to be pretty flexible and have all sorts of answers to very high hit point Pokemon, to dealing with multiple single prize Pokemon. It means that we can really cover our bases very nicely. So let's quickly familiarize ourselves with the new cards that are going to be on show today. The Lugia I've just mentioned, that 220 of Storm Dive easily can improve with powerful colorless energies, and the V-Guard energy on the right of your screen means that Lugia takes 30 less damage from V Pokemon, pushing the Lugia up to effectively 310 hit points, which is very, very solid. The Assemble Star is the complete build around, as is this Archeops. This is the target we will be putting into the discard pile because Primal Turbo allows you to accelerate 2 special energy from the deck, and our entire deck is special energy because of this, so we have plenty of targets for many of our attackers, not just the Lugia. This is really going to be the bread and butter of the list, and the new supporter card Serena is also going to feature here. It offers some great discard synergy as one of your choose one options of the supporter. Discarding stuff is really important, especially for Archeops. If we can get them into the discard pile, that's great news for us. But this can also be a means of gusting benched Pokemon V, which is, of course, a very, very good effect. Let's go into the deck list then. And like I said, we are playing an Aurora package. So we are playing 4 wonderful one prizes that I'll go into in great detail here now. But let's just stick with the high counts of the Lugia and the Archeops. The entire build around is this. Your deck crumbles if you don't get the Assemble Star going. So that's why you're also seeing 4 copies of Incense, Quick Ball, and Ultra Ball, all going to help things out here. Do bear in mind that Aurora Energy also has a discard 1 card from your hand text when you are manually attaching it, which means we have even more ways to discard our Archeops when we find them, which actually does give us a bit of a consistency boost in binning Archeops as soon as we see them, and that is the aim of the game, so that's an excellent thing to bear in mind here. We have all of these search cards, we have Auroras, and we have 5 of our supporters, Serenas and Researchers, which are going to have discard synergy stapled onto them as well. So all sorts of ways of getting these Archeops into the discard pile, which is huge. Let's start talking about our one-ofs. We, of course, are very aware of Radiant Charizard and how strong it's been. Ever since its release, it's found a way to be very strong here. That Excited Heart ability allowing us to cheat the attack cost that would normally be 5, which sounds absurd, but you can do it all in a turn if you really want to with this deck list, thanks to the acceleration that we play. But normally you're going to wait for this guy to be the sort of mid to late game finisher. That 250 can be buffed up with Choice Belt to 280, which is a monstrous number. That's why you can see such a high count of the belts. Belts not only good for Charizard, also great on Raikou, also great on Lugia, so always a thing to bear in mind and try and track down throughout the game, so Charizard can be that late game sweeper for us. Even the base 250, if we're chipping in with previous damage from possibly your Raikou, can set up even 3 prize Pokemon, so bear that in mind. We are playing the meme, the amazing rare Yveltal. Again, look at this silly attack cost. Fire, Psychic, and Darkness, as well as 2 colorless. But the upside is, you point at your opponent's active Pokemon and wave it goodbye. You can knock it out immediately. No matter the hit points, you just get right through it. So this means that we are going to be playing, in addition to our 4 Auroras, 1 Fire, or Heat Fire Energy, and 1 Hiding Darkness Energy. This means that Yveltal's actually a pretty decent lead in the deck, because we can Primal Turbo out that Hiding Darkness Energy and retreat to the bench quite happily. And bear in mind, a lot of people are playing Serenas now instead of Boss's Orders, so even just getting 1 energy banked on this Yveltal, or if you're feeling frisky, you can go Hiding an Aurora and know that you can Primal Turbo at a later stage to get back into this Yveltal swinging. That can be amazing for us. But this 5 energy attack cost can also be powered up all in 1 turn. You could go a mixture of Auroras, Hiding, Heat Fire, twin and double turbo all in the list to get this 5 energy attack cost going with just 2 uses of your Archeops. You can go Aurora, hiding, for example, and twin between your 2 Archeops. So this can be burst out all in a turn, which is absolutely crazy. And you can knock out even VMAX Pokemon or things with tons of health buffs. You don't really care about it. And I know what you're saying. Parasol does shut off this effect, and Parasol is already a played card in the format because Giratina's V-Star power is very strong. That's why we're playing a couple Lost Vacuums in the deck list to get rid of Parasols, also helping us fight that Stadium War because we need our Assemble Star to be online turn 2. So having Vacuums, Pumpkin, and Collapse Stadiums are going to really help us fight the fight against Path of the Peak, which is obviously our kryptonite, so we need to make sure that is live in the early stages. So the Vacuum really is chipping in. We're playing 2 copies to help out against, most importantly, so that Yveltal's active. And this is actually the only way that we can damage a Duraludon, actually. We're not even dealing damage, we're just knocking it out cleanly. But we have no other way to actually touch Duraludon because our entire deck is special energy. So having Lost Vacuum plus Yveltal in the deck gives us a 1-hit KO option immediately on them, which is huge. So we're hoping that we can sort of tempo out an Arcdura, where we can go Lugia KOs their Arceus, then Yveltal KOs the one Duraludon that they powered up, and ideally they don't actually have any attacker to follow. Even if they have another Duraludon, it's very unlikely that it's been powered up unless you've had a really slow janky start. So one Yveltal can, in theory, knock out 2 Duraludon VMAXs in specifically that matchup because they find it hard to use Duraludon turn by turn unless you've had a really slow start. So that's the hope. You're hoping that the Yveltal just sort of sits in play in that matchup once you've dealt with one of their VMAXs, which is actually entirely possible. So yeah, not playing Path of the Peak, just playing Yveltal Vacuum to help you get around a Parasoled Duraludon. We are playing a Raikou as well, which is a really fantastic card. We're not playing any of the other Metal or Grass, but we are still playing the 1 Speed Lightning, so that's good upside to just manually attach to a Raikou, which isn't a bad thing, as well as, of course, the Auroras. So that's why we have such silly attack costs here. But the Amazing Shot dealing 120 and 120 to one of your opponent's bench forces Manaphy's into play sometimes, or just allows you to milk some value, getting sometimes knockouts in mirror match situations as well, when combined with a Choice Belt is fantastic. Another reason why we love Lost Vacuum is because we can vacuum away the likes of Tool Jammer, which are in some Lugia builds. We're currently not playing the Jammer because I'm so afraid of Path. I just want Vacuums instead. But you can think about eating into the Vacuum count and play Jammers instead. The upside being Jammer can allow your Lugia to possibly tank a little bit more often. So maybe even a split of like 1 Vacuum, 1 Jammer could be a play. But right now I'm having maximum outs to just deal with Path, so it's not a headache. But regardless, if you're not up against a jammered Lugia and you have your belt, you can KO a Lugia, which is fantastic. Of course, they can make Dunsparce as well, but, make them have it, make them draw everything, and represent that Amazing Shot, which can be also really helpful in some one-prize matchups as well, like Lost Box if they haven't developed early. Also very helpful against Palkia as well. Again, just make them put Manaphy down, make them draw better, that sort of thing. It's a great option to have in the deck list. The last one on the list is the one that you may be the most surprised to see, and this is a Celebrations Palkia. It has the Absolute Space ability, which says when Palkia is in the active, your opponent can't play any Stadium cards from their hand. That's right, we are teching 4 lovely Reggies with this Palkia. So again, we have another upside here of this being a decent lead in the deck list, because then we don't have to fear about Path of the Peak in many instances. So this is already a good 1 prize lead in the deck, because straight away now you're not getting sort of wrecked by Path, so that you know your Assemble Star is online, which is one great thing for you. But secondly, because we're playing Collapse Stadiums in our deck list, you can troll the Reggie deck pretty nicely. You can see I'm not playing Dunsparce or Manaphy, so typically we're going to have a bad time into that matchup without this include, where now you can get Palkia active, play the Collapse down, suddenly they can't bounce Collapsed, and you're basically free to just use that Overdrive Smash. The main reason this works, specifically in the matchup, is that the Regieleki is so strong against our deck, right? But the bad news about Aleki is they have to discard their energies in order to perform their second attack. So they naturally discard energies from themselves, which means that even though the Overdrive Smash only does 80, the opponent won't be able to reload by the time you're able to Overdrive Smash 2 times. So then you are basically left unchecked. So you're sort of baiting the opponent to go into the Regieleki, which is probably the best thing to deal with, like your Lugia, for example, and then the Palkia comes in and you collapse them at the same time, which is absolutely disgusting, to be honest. And this is, I think, with the Aurora build, the most space-efficient way to deal with Regis. You can play no Palkia and just play collapse and sort of cross your fingers and hope in that matchup a little bit, maybe add to your Marnie count and hope for the best. But I feel like Palkia also adds to your good lead count, because it's another way to defend yourself against Path of the Peak, which is excellent. Also, this is just dealing 80 damage, and that doesn't sound like great news, but against things like Lost Box, because we have 130 hit points, and we can deal 80 just with the Twin plus an Aurora, means we can knock out Comphase, and then we can tank a hit from a Cram, which is also really good. So this is another helpful card in the Lost Box matchup. So with Raikou and Palkia, I feel pretty reasonable into Lost Box and pretty reasonable into Regis, thanks to our tech includes. So yeah, really like this Palkia. Haven't seen it in many of the Japanese lists, but if we're respecting Regi in the Western world, Palkia could be a very sneaky one-off to play, especially because you're just happy to protect yourself from Path in the early stages regardless. I'm still playing Pumpkaboo. It just adds to our bounces to Path even more. So now we have the 8 Ball Search cards right here, the 2 Vacuums, the 2 Collapsed, and the Pump. So we have many, many ways to play around Path of the Peak, which is huge because we want to be committing a lot of our search to like binning our Archeops and getting Lugia going in the first instance. But now anytime you see a Pumpkin, it's good news for you. We're playing Crobat and Lumineon here, just to get ourselves rolling in the game, and because I'm playing Boss's Orders in the list as a 3-1 split, I like having the Lumineon as that option. The reason why I'm playing Boss in this 60 and not the previous Lugia list that I showed was because I want to also have the option of knocking out Manaphy specifically, because then it can allow Raikou to do its nasty business, which is really nice. So yeah, I like having the 1-3 split when you are playing Lumineon. Otherwise, I would probably go for the full 4 Serena, and I wouldn't hate you for just adding an extra Serena into your deck list, because again, it's adding to discard and draw synergies for your Archeops. But I think when you play the fish, the 3-1 split is very reasonable here. And yeah, just 2 Marnie and 2 Research to add to your overall support accounts, which seems very reasonable. The Collapsed is definitely here for Regis to an extent, but also because we can represent a 1-prize game plan, it's also great to get rid of your Crobat and your fish, which is always a good thing for you. Which is excellent. Even collapsing against a Palkia when they already need to commit a space to a Manaphy can really hurt them as well. So some matchup reasons why we like the Collapse Stadium in the deck list. As for Special Energy, we don't get to play any gifts or any captures, which is a bit of sad news, but we are still playing the 1 V-Guard and the 4 Powerful, so we can make our initial Lugia just monstrous. We're playing double turbos and twin to help us retreat out of our stuff potentially, but also to power up our guys that much more consistently. And yeah, we have a little bit of redundancy with the 1 lightning to help on Raikou, the 1 fire to help on Zard or Yveltal, and the hiding darkness, which can sometimes be on Crobat possibly, but most likely on the Yveltal here as well. So it means that we have that little bit of license to prize maybe an Aurora, or even manually attach Auroras in the opening stages to Lugia while spinning Archeops, that sort of thing, more liberally, knowing that we have excess pieces rooting around our deck to still get our sort of combo enablers online most of the time. So yeah, very sort of spicy 60. All the innovation is coming in the Pokemon here, the 4-ofs, but it means that we have lots of ways to knock out V-Stars very easily, V-Maxes possibly very easily, and we have answers to 1 prizes all wrapped up in this nice 4-card package with our silly amount of special energy. Onto the other options then, we could get a little bit more defensive and still play Manaphy and Dunsparce. I feel a little bit scared in possible mirror match situations when I'm not playing Dunsparce, knowing that my opponent could be Raikouing my stuff down, which makes me a little bit upset. Also makes us a lot worse into Vikavolt right now. And Manaphy, again, could be another tech card if you wanted to. I can easily foresee these 2 still going in the deck list, maybe take the Palkia out and make another space somewhere to still respect Regis, but also there's other upsides to Dunsparce and Manaphy. It really is meta-dependent whether or not you should be playing these cards. Mew also just adding to that Mysterious Tail, allowing you to see more Ball Search cards in the opening stages just to get your stuff in the bin, get your Archeops in the bin, and also just give you more access to Lugia, give you better leads in the deck as well, is something that I'm definitely considering in the list. And Guru, again, helping you protect around Serena and researching away crucial pieces, putting special energies that you draw or take off prizes back into the deck so you can turbo them into play. If you've got multiple special energy in hand, for example, can be a really big deal for you. And again, not the worst lead, especially because it can hit at 70 damage, which is a crucial breakpoint for Sobbles and Confays and whatnot. So yeah, could be a reasonable card to consider in the list. I'm not playing Roxanne despite playing Lumineon. I think our overall support account is quite low, but if you want the power spike of a Roxanne, it could be an option, especially because we play Fish in this list. Trying to sneak in any amount of gift or capture energy is always going to give you bonus points for getting going in the game in terms of capture, or having some late game defense with the gift. The reason why I don't have gift specifically right now is because it doesn't work too well on Yveltal, doesn't work too well on Raikou. It is still pretty reasonable on Charizard, and obviously it's great on Lugia, but typically your Lugia wants to be loaded up with powerfuls regardless, so I don't think there's many times to work the gift energy in, which is why it's not being played, but it still can give you some great defense against hand disruption. Like I said, Jammer could be a card to keep your Lugia that little bit more healthy, especially in mirror match situations, to stop possibly Zeraora, but also Raikou from doing its business on you. Even the Regieleki, you have more tankability in that instance, even without Dunsparce, so that could be finding its way into the list. Zeraora versus Raikou is an interesting debate. Raikou, obviously, much more hungry for your Aurora energies, which sort of starves your Yveltal and starves your Charizard that little bit. But also, Zeraora has a natural free retreat, which sort of makes Zeraora and Yveltal pretty good leads in the deck, especially when you're going second, because they can turn into natural free retreaters, which is so good for you. Zeraora will also need the choice belt similar to Raikou. It's just Zeraora is far, far worse into the one prize matchups. So if you're still expecting Lost Box, I would prefer Raikou, which is why I have right now. But if you're just expecting more mirror matches and stuff like that, you could improve your leads by changing the Zeraora for a Raikou. So again, a meta-dependent choice. And the Giga's still a decent colorless powerhouse. Right now, the Yveltal is sort of taking up that spot, but you could also go for a Gigas line here, and again, sort of spend your powerfuls and your twins and double turbos on the Gigas, knowing that you can keep your Auroras around for your Yveltal later on, could also be a play here if you'd like. And then we have Echoing Horn, possibly. If you're thinking that you want easier routes around prize maps and forcing other 2-prize Pokemon into play, it can work quite well with Collapsed in your list as well, actually, because you can Collapse Stadium, then use Lugia to discard Collapsed, and that means that in later stages, your opponent sometimes will have open board slots for you to horn and boss things back. It can work well with a Raikou as well as bringing back multiple 2-prize Pokemon. It could help you that little bit against possibly Duraludon as well. If you are only able to knock out one and the opponent has the response on your Yveltal, you could then possibly have that Echoing Horn deal with their Arceus that you knocked out earlier kind of deal. So if you're really respecting Dura, you can add in the Horn once again. Also, the matchup spread, I think right now we're trying to boast so many things in this list that we actually have a very good matchup spread on paper. Now, here's the issue. We've got so many things going on in the deck list, we may be a little bit less consistent. You could see in the pure colorless build that I was mentioning earlier a few days ago, I said that we were pretty awkward into Gigas the way I had it built and pretty awkward into Sablezard the way I had it built. Now we've sort of covered those bases. We play Collapsed and Palkia to deal with Gigas, and we play Raikou and a number of other 1-prize attackers into the Sablezard matchup. Even, again, Palkia, a helpful card to deal with Confays in the opening stages, and can just be a pretty decent option for you because it can tank cram hits for some tempo. I just think the fact that we're more 1-prize based and have the early tempo of Lugia is pretty good into Lost Box in general, knowing that we can pivot later on. So I really think your natural only sort of bad matchup right now is Vikavolt. Again, certainly because I'm not playing Dunsparce, that's not going to help things. But the fact that we can sometimes have our setup stifled by an early item lock is something that does still terrify me, especially when you're going first as Lugia and the opponent gets to get that turn 1 attack off with a Vikavolt. It can really hinder your setup, and it means that sometimes you don't even get to V-Star on turn 2 or 3, and your opponent can sort of just decimate your board, and all your wacky, wonderful 1-prize stuff just isn't working. So it's a very sad sight to see, but that could be the case. So yeah, be aware of Vikavolt, Aleki. If they just hit the combo and choose to go second against you or whatever, you're going to have a bad time. But otherwise, I think we have our covers we're covering our bases with the 4 one-offs that we're going for here. We can represent really annoying prize maps whilst having a Lugia coming out the gate swinging early when we need to. On to the closing thoughts then. I do love this build being aggressive with your powerful colorlesses. I feel like when you go second with this deck list and you are able to immediately respond on a V-Star Pokemon with a Lugia that then has a V-Guard energy can still feel amazing, and you don't have that headache of thinking, oh, now I'm out of powerful colorless energies, how am I going to get the rest of my prizes? Well, there you go. We've got our Auroras with high damage potential from Charizard, high damage potential from Yveltal, so no sweat the fact that you're losing a few of your colorless energies, you still have great beat sticks waiting in the wings that take advantage of different energy for you, which is awesome. I do think, like I said just a moment ago on the matchup spread chart, that playing this wacky number of Aurora basics means that we should have decent times into most matchups, and we could even tech further if you wanted to into other matchups that you're potentially concerned about. You could even add in things like Galarian Zapdos if you're afraid of Vikavolt, because that's a very V-heavy deck, of course, and the Zapdos can come and hit for weakness and has its discounts thanks to all these Vikas. So we could tech our list even further to have answers to all sorts of decks in the formats if we really wanted to. But it does all eat into the consistency. Even changing Auroras for captures is kind of interesting because Aurora can help you discard Archeops and gives you more outs in that regard. But just losing out on captures means that you just have less access to like multiple Lugia in the opening stages, forces your ball search to act quite differently. So you are losing out on some consistency slots. Like I said, we're not playing gift energy either, so we don't have that sort of mid-game draw that a pure colorless build would have. So you are taking some sacrifices here and there. You have to play your board that little bit differently, sometimes proactively putting some of your one prizes into play because you don't play natural switch outs in the deck list without, you know, the hiding darkness. So you sometimes need to, you know, put your Zard out there ready to turbo for the following turn. Your opponent can pick apart the board with Lost City and whatnot. So there are weaknesses with the Aurora build, but there are also, you know, you cover so many bases, you should just have a wide matchup spread. And as long as you're consistent enough, it's going to be a real strong contender. So let me know your thoughts on the Aurora build down below. What other Aurora attackers are you considering in your deck list? Did you think of Palkia, or did you think it's an absolute meme and that's going to be the first card you cut from the deck? I'll hear it all down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.